In a dry and dusty land, long ago, lived a rich merchant named Marcus. He was a man of wagons, gold, and strong horses, but his heart was as barren as the roads he traveled. People feared him for his cruelty and pride. To Marcus, value was measured only in profit. Once something or someone ceased to be useful, they were discarded without a second thought. Kindness was a currency he never traded in. Among his many horses was an old black one named Shadow. For years, Shadow had been his most loyal servant, carrying priceless goods across treacherous mountains and scorching deserts, through fierce storms, never once faltering. But time is relentless. Shadow's powerful legs grew weak, his pace slowed, and a curtain of darkness fell over his eyes. Once he was completely blind, Marcus cast him aside, pushing him into the gloomiest corner of the stable. No one brushed his coat. No one spoke a gentle word. Shadow stood in the silent darkness, waiting to be forgotten. In that same region lived a poor woodcutter named Aaron. At 50, his back was bent from a lifetime of hard labor, his hands cracked and rough like old wood. He lived in a tiny hut with his wife and 5 children. Every day, he journeyed to distant hills, carrying heavy loads of firewood on his back. He had no cart, no animal to help him, only his own worn-out body. Aaron sold most of his wood to Marcus, and each transaction was a trial of humiliation. Marcus would make him wait, insult his work, and pay him a pittance, treating him as if he were less than the dust on his boots. Aaron bore it all in silence. It was not weakness that kept his head bowed, but the fierce, unwavering love for his children, whose hunger kept him standing. One day, business took Aaron into Marcus's stables for the first time. His eyes first fell upon the strong, well-fed horses, their coats gleaming with health. Then, his gaze drifted to a dark, forgotten corner. There stood Shadow, thin and frail, his head lowered in resignation. In that moment, Aaron felt a pang in his chest, a shock of recognition. He saw his own life reflected in the weary stance of that blind horse. Both had given their strength until there was nothing left, and both had been deemed worthless. Aaron stepped closer, his heart aching, and gently touched Shadow's neck. The old horse didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, he leaned into the touch, the first spark of kindness he had felt in a very long time. Aaron whispered softly to him, his own eyes filling with tears for this forgotten soul. Later, Aaron found the courage to ask Marcus why the old horse was treated so cruelly. Marcus sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "He's useless," he spat. "A blind, worthless animal." Aaron, his voice barely a whisper, asked if he could take the horse. Marcus burst into mocking laughter, scornfully refusing. That very night, a storm of rage brewed inside Marcus. He stormed into the stable, his mind fixated on an old grudge. Years ago, on a perilous journey, Shadow had been part of a convoy that lost 2 sacks of gold. Marcus had never forgiven him. Fueled by greed and fury, he took a whip and beat the helpless, blind horse, blaming him for his long-lost fortune. Then, in a final act of cruelty, he ordered his men to drag Shadow into the desert and leave him tied to a tree to perish. The next morning, Aaron went into the desert to gather firewood, his heart heavy. As he walked, a faint sound reached his ears, a weak, broken cry carried on the wind. He ran toward it, his dread growing with every step. There, tied to a dead, skeletal tree, he found Shadow. The horse was shaking, dehydrated, and just moments from death. Aaron fell to his knees beside him. He poured water from his own flask onto the horse's dry tongue, unfastened the cruel ropes, and with gentle words, coaxed the animal to its feet. He led Shadow slowly and carefully back to his humble home. His neighbors laughed and pointed, mocking him for collecting trash. But Aaron paid them no mind. He held a quiet faith that God often hides miracles inside the very things the world has rejected. Aaron and his family cared for Shadow with unwavering patience. They shared their meager food, gave him water, and spoke to him with the tenderness he had been denied for so long. Slowly, miraculously, the old horse began to regain his strength. Though his eyes saw only darkness, his other senses were sharp. He listened. He remembered. One morning, just before dawn, Shadow grew restless. He nudged Aaron gently, pulling at his sleeve as if urging him to follow. Trusting the instinct of this animal he had saved, Aaron let the horse lead him. They walked deep into the desert, Shadow moving with a strange and certain confidence, never stumbling, following an ancient route remembered only in his bones. They reached a cluster of rocks, one of which was shaped like a bird's head. There, Shadow stopped. He pawed at the ground insistently, striking the sand with his hoof. Aaron started to dig. Just beneath the surface, he uncovered two old, rotting sacks. He opened them, and his breath caught in his throat. Inside was the glimmer of gold coins, the very treasure Marcus had lost all those years ago. Aaron took only what he could carry, his mind reeling. He returned home a different man. With the gold, he bought food and warm clothes for his family. For the first time in years, his children went to bed with full bellies. But Marcus, ever watchful, noticed the change in the woodcutter's fortunes. His suspicion grew, and the old, familiar poison of greed began to pump through his veins again. He followed Aaron back into the desert, bringing one of his men with him. When they reached the rocky outcrop, Marcus confronted him, his voice a venomous shout. He screamed and threatened, his eyes wild with avarice. The sight of the remaining gold drove Marcus and his worker into a frenzy. They began to fight over the treasure, their greed turning them into beasts. In their madness, they turned on each other, their struggle ending in mutual destruction. Aaron and Shadow, the two souls who had been cast aside, were the only ones left standing. Aaron wisely buried the remaining gold and left that place forever. He returned to his simple life, but he was no longer poor. Yet, he never became proud. He used his fortune to help others in his village, always remembering the feeling of hunger and despair. And with a portion of the gold, he paid for a delicate surgery for his faithful friend. The operation was a success. Shadow's sight was restored. The old horse, once left for dead, spent his final years running freely in green pastures, surrounded by love, living in peace and dignity. His story, and Aaron's, became a quiet legend, a testament to the idea that true worth is not found in what you own, but in the kindness you show to the forgotten and the broken. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more.